if they can, when joining us in this meeting today, if they can turn on their cameras so we can see us all again. Maybe you just saw all of you yesterday, but for most of you, it's the first time you see Dani. So it would be nice to have also this kind of contact.
So hello, everybody. Very, very pleased to meet you. With some of you we already met, like the friends from Urba Sofia and Barbara, and we also met Evgeny in the last weeks, but with others we don't know yet. I'm Daniela Patti. I'm a colleague of Jorge's and Bahanur from Utopian, and today, I'm not directly working on the AGORA project. As you know, it's more my colleagues, but we thought it would be an interesting opportunity for connecting some ongoing European-funded projects that are working on similar topics. And in particular, we wanted to create a synergy between the AGORA project and the Open Heritage project. Open Heritage is a EU-funded project under the Horizon 2020 framework. And it is working on developing new governance and new financial models for adaptive reuse of heritage through community development. And I say this because there are many points of contacts with what is being developed by AGORA in different cities. So we thought it would be interesting because we recently developed a training module on a different governance model for adaptive reuse of heritage. And as I know, you are currently working on the different sites and developing your strategy. So we thought that it could be a useful opportunity for exchanging some of the experiences and discussing also a little bit more about what is happening in your case studies. Unfortunately, technologies are not on my side today, so my computer decided to go on strike. There is actually national strike in Italy, so maybe that's why. So I'm going to ask Jorge to share the presentation for me. Thank you for the collaboration on this, Jorge.
Andrada, you need to give me the power.
Try now.
Perfect.
Can you see it, Dani? Okay.
Yes, I do, thank you. So the idea for today is to have a first moment of training of governance, but actually, Jorge, forgive me, maybe before we share the presentation again, so now we see at least it works, so that's a good point for the technology. Maybe we could do a quick round of the presentation because I've read the documents and Jorge has explained to me about all the different partners, but maybe it would be nice to have first a round of presentation with who's in the room.
Sure.
So feel free to just open your mic and freely introduce yourself, just to have an idea of who's in the digital room.
Yeah, I can start. I know that all partners already know me because we were working a lot on the task one, which was lasting for a year. So I'm Barbara, I'm coming from Urban Planning Institute, and we were the task leader, which was actually finished. We developed together with other partners the AGORA toolkit, which includes also the governance models and governance tools, which will be in line in your presentation. And I'm sure that partner will get insight also into your project and what you developed there.
Thank you.
I would like to hear from Evgeny. Morning.
Good morning. Hello to everyone. My name is Evgeny Atanasov, and I'm a newly appointed project coordinator for the AGORA project on behalf of Sofia municipality. I'm an heating, ventilation, air conditioning engineer, and I'm eager to be joining this seminar.
Thank you, Eugenia. And with Eugenia we met because you actually joined some of the training, but not the governance one, fortunately. So hopefully we're going to be talking about things that are at least new or not heard in the previous sessions that you joined with us. Thank you.
I will try quickly to catch up.
Hi, I'm Andrada. I'm working on behalf of Urba Sofia on work package task 3 regarding the co-design of the urban regeneration agendas. I'm an urban planner, and I don't know. I'm eager also to see what's going to happen with this webinar.
Thank you. Good morning. I see Kata in video. Hi, Kata.
Yes, hello. I'm Kata Csordas, and I'm working with Szarvas, Hungary.
Okay, very nice to meet you. Hi.
You too.
And I see Anna Haichin. I'm not sure how the pronunciation of the. Sorry for distorting your name. Apologies for that. We don't hear you.
Yeah, it's Achchin. Yeah, I have some problems with connection. Sometimes my camera and my microphone just turns off voluntarily. Yeah, I work in Kran at municipality, and I work on municipality spatial plan. I'm architect, and yeah, looking forward to new things that we will learn and find out today.
Thank you. I see Katerina.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Katerina, and I'm working as a project coordinator on behalf of the European Development Agency. We are kind of a supporting partner for the territory of Prague 9, which is basically like our role in this project.
Okay, very welcome. So I see some other faces, like I see Esther Makshar, I guess.
Yes,
hello.
Esther Makshar, hello. Good morning to everybody. I am from municipality of Szarvas, from city of Szarvas. I am project coordinator for AGORA together with Kata and Sebő, who is not present now, but we are together working in the AGORA project.
Okay, very
Thank
welcome.
You.
I see Heike. Hello.
Hello, Heike Battenbach from Regionalverband Neckar-Alb.
Hello, nice to meet you all. And with the others, I don't know if maybe you have the audio and video working. If you would like to just say a quick hello, you can even write in chat if it's difficult to speak. I see Anita's writing. Okay, so very pleased to meet you. Okay, so thank you for sharing a little bit to have an idea so that I can put some faces also to the different cities and the different case studies that are in the AGORA project. So obviously AGORA is working on a different region than the Horizon 2020 Open Heritage is focusing on, because the case studies, the very interesting thing about AGORA is that it's working on the Danube region, therefore also working with countries that are some of which are already are not yet European member states, which makes it extremely interesting because we're less acquainted with exchanging with such countries, and also this also means that it's a slightly different approach. One thing that absolutely though is in common is the fact of looking in different typologies of buildings in the moment in which we define heritage. Now, I won't go into a long definition about what we mean by heritage, but definitely we mean something that could be listed, could be protected at national level through legislation, but it definitely is defined as heritage, as something that is recognized by the local communities as a tangible, so could be a building, could be a space, or intangible like cultural assets that are strongly recognizable as part of the history, as part of the identity of one or more communities. with this very general background, when we look into spaces of cities, this can mean historical buildings, and this is the most, let's say, traditional, but it can also mean post-industrial. It can mean also different types of underused spaces, and particularly in the case of open heritage, one of the focuses is specifically on marginalized areas. So in the last years, and this is quite common, we have seen that it is relatively easy to get foreign investment, could be foreign investment on heritage sites when these are recognized as being very valuable, being in central areas of cities. Some of you might have seen, for example, historical buildings being turned into luxury hotels, for instance. We can discuss what is the impact, because this is one of the causes of gentrification. This is one of the causes for the increase of the real estate value in many areas, but at least the buildings are somehow being regenerated. At least this is something that we can definitely say is being done. What is not happening very often is in peripheral areas, when we find heritage that might not be from a historical point of view quite as valuable as the one in the historical center, when we see that it is valuable because it is part of the history of communities that are often maybe in socioeconomic disadvantaged conditions, which means that they will not be immediately directly able to reinvest on the regeneration of this building. And so what do you do in that case? Well, this is what, in these conditions, in this specific type of conditions in which we cannot imagine to have a guardian angel coming from abroad and investing loads of money in the regeneration of our heritage site, we believe that we have to build on strengthening our communities. We believe that the communities, it's not only an issue of participation, so consultation and informing the citizens about what is happening, but is actually activating them towards a common project. And activating them means also in terms of organization and in terms of financial models. So at this point, this is when I would ask Jorge if he can share the presentation. Thank you so much, Jorge.
Okay.
Today, we have a first step of what is the training. Now, training is usually when we also imply a more practical dimension, which we will not be testing today, but we also discussed with our Urba Sofia friends that it could be something that we could organize again, for example, after the summer holiday. So we can think of having different moments together. Today, what we're going to have is a first brainstorming session, focusing on what do we mean by governance. So I would ask Jorge to go to the next, please. So, first of all, a bit of definitions of what we mean by governance. Obviously, nowadays, governance is something that is a very used word, but we definitely mean all those processes, all those interactions that go through laws, through norms, but also through power relations, through language, so also through intangible relationships, by organized structures in society, which could be formalized or could be also informal groups. So it's extremely broad, what do we mean by governance? But basically the governance is a structured mechanism of politics. And what we believe in this is that it is extremely important to be able to define structures that allow for a democratic participation between the formal institutions. I would ask Jorge to go to the next one. The other element that we would like to have as a definition is the community development, because this is something that we believe is extremely important in order to be able to have the approach we've been talking about. So we're not only talking about participation, so it's not only about consulting the inhabitants whether or not they like the project that we're bringing forward, but it's actually working on their empowerment, on strengthening the human rights, the inclusion, the social justice, and the social determination towards collective action. This means that the communities become active in the development of projects. And here is a very big discussion also of which type of communities do we engage, because especially if we're talking about peripheral neighborhood, maybe poorer neighborhoods, communities will be most likely in conditions that might have not a lot of financial resources, not a lot of work, not a lot of time, because they're working a lot and often underpaid, or with a high level of unemployment, which could mean also that they also have a low level of skills and formal educational certifications. So working on community development is not something abstract, it's something we're talking about working with the people of the neighborhood. So it is extremely important to identify on which are the people, the communities in the neighborhood, and to really address what are the causes of the inequality and the disadvantages in order to be able to get them involved, to get them empowered, to get them in the condition of working together. So I would ask Jorge to go to the next slide. So this is the starting point of what we're saying. So when we're talking about governance in this, what the stories that we'll be telling you here are not specifically stories that are only driven by the public administration. These are stories that are coming through a strong interaction between different type of players in the city. And it's important because these stories were the possibilities that were enabled by the public administration in this case. There are many cases when they're not, but we've been focusing on cases where they have been, that citizens and local inhabitants have been empowered through this process. And this is an extremely important aspect in which the regeneration of sites not only is an opportunity per se of regenerating the building, but it's a driver for regenerating the social tissue of a neighborhood, of a city, of an area. So this said, we would like to take you to Turin. Has anybody been to Turin in Italy? You can even write in the chat if you like. Unfortunately, I don't see you right now, but anyway, I believe maybe not many of you, but Turin, just very short. It's a city. Okay, Barbara has, okay. So Turin is a city that historically over the last 50 years after the Second World War, it was the first capital of Italy and so on. We won't get into that part of the history, but in the most recent history, who has heard of Fiat? Has anybody heard? Oh dear, I thought Fiat would be more known than Turin. So Fiat is the national, or used to be the national Italian car brand, and which is not so known maybe in the last years. I thought it would be more abroad, but maybe I'm wrong. And it used to be produced in Turin. So Turin over the last 50 years has been known for being a very industrial city with very, very much driven by the car industry. One of the reasons why many of you, especially because probably also there's an issue of age, because over the last 20 years approximately, Fiat has lost its market basically. So also I assume then also abroad it's not as known as it used to be. The car industry started failing, and this I'm saying because the building that we're talking about is in the neighborhood where there used to be the manufacturing of the cars. Now in this area, therefore, there was a very, very strong population working in the car industry, so it was working class. And what happened was that with the regeneration of the entire sector of the city, also as a result of the refunctionalization of the production in the city, the cascina used to be an old farmhouse that was still left in the tissue in between. It happens sometimes that some old agricultural buildings are left in the urban tissue as the tissue grows. And what happened was that they started having a series of, they call them social tables in the Mirafiori neighborhood, where they started discussing about what would happen, what were the citizens' needs. And the people, and these tables were composed by a bit less than 100 people that was represented by association, social workers, but also health services, children organizations, all different types of social groups and therefore communities in the neighborhood. And they started discussing about the need to have somehow a community venue. So a space that would build, that would help the growing of the inhabitants. So I would ask Jorge to go to the next.
There's a video. Should I play?
There's a video. The video is about 8 minutes. I'm just thinking whether for time it might be. So maybe we leave it. We leave it for the. Or maybe, Jorge, let's try maybe just showing it just for, we won't show it all because it's a bit long, but I think it's very nice to give also a bit of an impression of is it working?
Yeah, I just need to log in.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
We discover all Jorge's passwords.
Sorry,
I
yeah. I don't know what happened.
Tell you what, no worries. Let's go on. We'll show you the video after. In the meantime, we'll go forwards with them.
Okay, no, sorry, it's here now. Just a sec. You can tell me where to go.
Okay, brilliant. Just leave the. Thank you very much. Just leave the video. So while we're speaking, we can just show a little bit the.
Okay.
So here you see some of the views of Turin, and as we were saying, Turin is a city that was very strongly. And here you see the Cascina. So here you see the regeneration of the Cascina that is on the one hand keeping the historical value of the Cascina in the 17th century, from the 17th century. And then as well, it involved very amongst the best contemporary architects that were operating in Turin at the time, with very high environmental standards. So despite you see a lot of glass in the facade, it was possible to study all the heating system. So you can imagine these large buildings that are having at the inside a cafeteria where people with disabilities are working, predominantly Down syndrome, where you also have a series of community spaces, such as you have a theater, you have rooms for community meetings or community parties, you have a library, you have a kindergarten, and all this different typology of functions allows for having, here you see, for example, the community library. For those of you who are interested, you can also, we will share with you the link, so you can also listen to the videos. There are 8 minutes of interviews with the different stakeholders, which give you far more insights. I'm giving you a synopsis here because of time. We want to give you a bit of a broader idea, but we will share the materials, and I think it could be useful for you to sort of get it a little bit more in the insights. As you see, it's a very big space, also with a very big open space that, not in winter, but in the rest of the year, it allows for having also outside activities, which, by the way, nowadays in times of COVID have turned out to be an extremely useful space. And the interesting thing about this, of the model, is the fact that the management of the structure, the project was led by the municipality, co-managed with a number of associations. And this is the reason why the governance model of the Cascina Roccafranca is a foundation, which is participated by the municipality on the one hand, which puts civil servants working for the municipality in, puts the budget to hire personnel for the Cascina Roccafranca itself, but the management is also managed also by the associations that are part of the federation that is managing the foundation. And this is particularly relevant because this impacts also the financial model. The project was financed at the time with EU funding from, those of you who might know, the Urban program. but the management, you can imagine that is always an issue. You might find the management, the money to regenerate a site, but to find the money also to manage a structure, especially when you have very high living costs for personnel, for heating, for running the activities. This currently is shared between the public administration investing as well as budget that is coming also from different types of sponsorships, private funding and foundation. There is a very big banking foundation in Turin which supports this project. I think, thank you, Jorge. This gives you a little bit also, it's always good, aside of knowing the story, also to have a bit of an idea of these spaces. I think this is why it's so good to have videos. It allows you to meet the people a little bit, see the spaces and have a bit more of an understanding. As we said, we will share the videos with you. And in the meantime, we can get back to the presentation so we can get back to the building. And this is why we wanted to show you the space, because that helps you then to understand when we have these synthetic tables that are explaining how the Cascina Roccafranca works. So one of the aspects is the ownership. As we said, the building is owned by the municipality of Turin, but the management is handled by the foundation, which is jointly managed by the municipality and district representative, together with board directors that are coming from the city, and by the College of Participants, which has 45 associates between local NGO and local citizens groups. So ultimately, we can say that this is a public-private foundation where the private is actually a very social private. And this is, I think, a quite interesting aspect. When we're talking about the funding, so the municipality gives the building for free and covers some of the cost, especially provided for thank you, Jorge, for the
I answer to Barbara, sorry.
No, that's very good. And this is one of the aspects, is also the revenue. So the activities, one of the aspects is also that some of the spaces can also be rented out, always with an affordable price, but this also helps the sustainability of the project. And I would ask Jorge to go to the next. Okay. So Cascina Roccafranca has now been operating for the last 11 years. And here you see also some quotes and so on, but what is particularly relevant is if we start looking into what is the impact of the Cascina Roccafranca in the neighborhood. Now, within the Open Heritage Project, this was one of the cases, we call them the observatory cases. So let's say the good practices that we interviewed, as you saw via video, we studied the documentation. We didn't do an impact assessment of the project because this also would require a different set of resources. But one thing that has been a common shared information is multifold. So we see that on the one hand, managing projects like this has helped the municipality to train. So there is an investment on human capital. We see it in the public administration, because we see that the civil servants and the public administration and the politicians at large have learned to manage projects in a different way together with citizens, because this is what the foundation forces them to do. We've seen the same learning curve also through the local NGOs and the inhabitants, because having an asset like this means that a lot of inhabitants access a space like this, maybe just to celebrate a birthday party of one of their friends, and through this start getting interested in the cultural and the social and the sports activities that are offered within the Cascina Roccafranca. So it's an important instrument for bringing also inclusion and culture in neighborhoods which used to be extremely poor in terms of social infrastructure. But it also has a very strong impact in terms also of activating regeneration in the neighborhood, because obviously the building per se was regenerated, but the spillover effect it had over in the neighborhood also brought or contributed to bringing an increase, for example, in the cultural activities in the neighborhood that used to be an extremely working class neighborhood with no cultural activity whatsoever. So what we can see is that projects such as this one have a very, very strong impact, firstly on the social, definitely on the social human capital, and on the urban tissue, not only of the building that is being regenerated, obviously, but also on the neighborhood surrounding it. So these are some of the elements that we would like to share with you today. Before I share with you another example, I would like to know if you would have any questions related to the case of the Cascina Rocca Franca before we share with you other stories.
Daniela, thanks for interesting presentation. I just wonder, you mentioned funding. Was this foundation established also due to be co-financed by, from the EU funds? Did the foundation apply for funds or the municipality for regenerating?
Okay. Thank you, Barbara. That's a very interesting question. So the EU funding for the regeneration of the building, for the refurbishment of the building, was fully funded by the municipality through EU funds of Urban, which was a funding that was going on in 2006, 2013. Some of you might have had Urban funding. Unfortunately, it's no longer available, but it was an interesting funding because it was large amounts of money that were managed by the municipalities for integrated urban regeneration. The foundation was then created after the regeneration, specifically focusing on the management of the building. So the mission of the foundation was for the management, and it does have also financial means because it's a foundation that manages the finances of the building, and also that applies for funding that could be for European funds as well as grants, for example, from the municipality, or grants also that are coming from private foundations like the bank foundations, which is very strong in Turin. Thank you, Barbara. I don't know if there's any questions from anybody else related to the case of Turin. So I would ask Harke if we can go back to the presentation, and I'll share with you then another story. And this time, and the Slav speakers will forgive my dreadful pronunciation, but Stara Strnica, which means old market, and I can see Barbara laughing there. I guess that wasn't too good pronunciation, but it was close enough. Okay, thank you, Barbara. So this time we're going to Bratislava, and this is an old market. And maybe, Jorge, I would ask you if you go to the next slide. Let's see if it works. We could show the video, and as we see the moving images, if it works, I will speak a little bit.
Just a sec.
Sorry, Jorge. Okay, sorry.
No problem. I just need a second to go to Vimeo.
We're talking. How many of you have been to Bratislava? Some of you, not many. Let me see if there's anybody in the chat saying that they've been. No, so none of you have been to Bratislava. Well, Bratislava is a very nice city. I invite you to go. It's capital of Slovakia, very close to Vienna. So if you happen to go to one, I recommend also visiting the other. So Kata has, okay. And when you are in the very city center of Bratislava, in one of the main squares, you find the old market. The old market was abandoned for approximately 10 years. And here you see some shots from Bratislava, and there you see the market in the square. So you can see that in one of the main squares of Bratislava, this building had a very prominent position, but it was abandoned for approximately 10 years, owned by the municipality, and not really knowing what to do because the market activities were no longer functioning so much, because nowadays most people go to the supermarket to do their shopping. So the market was losing its function. And what happened was that here you see Gabor Bindic from the Old Market Alliance, which is an NGO coming, actually, interestingly enough, the founders are actually coming from the club scene. Bratislava. So many of them were actually managing spaces that were more from the nightlife and the sort of cultural and nightlife scene in Bratislava, and decided to, let's say, apply their skills to the regeneration of the food market. And it was a very interesting process. So let's look into the governance model. So the association, this is an association that is promoting the regeneration of the market, and they made an agreement with the municipality saying that the building would be given at a symbolic rent, but that the agreement would be that all the revenue of the building would actually be reinvested on the regeneration of the building, which was needing. You see here now very nice lively video images of the inside of the market, but before this group entered it, it was actually in very, very poor conditions. And what they decided to do was, here you see some of the spaces, was to rent out some of the spaces to social enterprises that would work, for example, with kitchens, with beer activities and biking rentals for tourists, and then have the market every Saturday open to the public with products from the region, with the local farmers. But then during the week, the space would be also rented out in balancing more cultural and social activities that would be free and accessible to the inhabitants, to more market-oriented activities that would be actually rented out at a high price. And this is the case, for example, Bratislava, being the advantage of this venue is that, unlike the previous one we were talking about in Mirafiori, this one is extremely central. So it's very fancy, it's very big, it's very cool, if you'll excuse me my informal language, but this actually makes it, but it's interesting for large tech companies, for example, that are having their meetings or their public events to be renting out this venue, and they are able to spend a lot of money. And this money is then reinvested in the regeneration of the market itself, balancing through the different activities. So I see Andrea has to leave. It was nice to have you with us. I would stop the video now and slowly move back to the presentation. Once again, you will be able to meet the players and the promoters of the project also in the video interviews that you can listen then in detail after. But it was just to give you also a little bit of a feel of what this space is, so you can also then tell us to what extent this building maybe also reminds you of something that is connected to what you're working on. So what the situation is that, as we said, the market was a market space until 1960, then abandoned for a long time, with difficulties in finding in its function up until the 1990s. And it was only in 2013 that the space was actually renovated. If I can ask Jorge to go to the next slide. Thank you. So here you find a synthetic model. Again, the ownership. The ownership is of the municipality and the building is heritage protected. The management is done by the Old Market Hall Alliance. We met Gabor before, which has an agreement of a contract of 10 plus 5 years with the municipality. But in turn, in return, the rent of the building is done for events and businesses. And this brings us to the financial model, because it's what is called a rent to invest scheme. This means that there are no public subsidies, but that this is the interesting, what we were saying, that the rent is symbolic. They only are paying, the Old Market Alliance is paying €1 rent a year. But then the agreement is that they have to invest €10,000 per month in the regeneration of the market hall. So this means €120,000 a year which makes it up to approximately 2 million euro by the end of the contract. This is a lot of money. As you can imagine, this scheme is actually creating a lot of revenue. But what is interesting is obviously this scheme is possible in the moment in which we consider a place that is in a city that is growing. Bratislava is changing its geopolitical position in Central Europe over the last years, with companies increasingly finding it interesting to position their businesses there, with tourism growing, and being the building very central, and also offering very large spaces that obviously offer the possibility of renting out for large events like concerts, like meetings, like venues, and so on. If I can ask Jorge to go to the next one. Thank you. So what is interesting here is that when we're talking about the governance, and one of the things also is what we said is the fact that the spaces is also rented out to a series of, there is a planning of the use of the building throughout day and night, throughout the week. So the social businesses are predominantly working during the week and making sure that the building is active. The large central space is rented out also during the week, but definitely on a Saturday used as a market space. There is no regular structure, unlike, for example, the model of the foundation that we had in the case of Cascina Roccafranca. In this case, what is interesting is that there isn't a regular association, for instance, with the inhabitants of the neighborhood. But at the same time, that the Alliance organizes a series of events with the tenants of the building, and open also to the city for structuring the events, because it is true that they have to raise a lot of money, but they are a non-profit organization. So the aim for them is to raise enough money to be able to regenerate the building, but balancing out the community access of the activities that are being carried out. So what is interesting also now is that the next step that the New Market Alliance is focusing on is the creation of an association that will be working on the public space outside of the market, so the large square in front of the building. And this is obviously a space where there would be also much more of a possibility for a role also in the management. So I think this is also the case of the Stara Strnica old market in Bratislava. We still have some minutes, so I think this is, I think the next slide is just, these stories, I was forgetting one thing. All these stories that we are sharing with you are available on the Open Heritage Project, as well as on Cooperative City. And in Cooperative City, you also find way more articles also. This is maybe you already heard about this magazine from Jorge and Bahanor, but in case you haven't, this is a free access magazine that Utopian runs now since 6 years, and where we talk about collaborative urban regeneration processes from predominantly around Europe. We would aim at having one day also around the world. And there still aren't that many stories from your cities. So we would be very, very happy to increase the repertoire of articles by also sharing stories that are from your city. And this said, the next one, I think, is going now to a more interactive activity. But before that, I just wanted to ask, are there any questions related to the Stara Strnica case? Something that you would like to...
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I'm sorry, maybe I overheard it, but was the Alliance used only the income from this renting and organizing events to cover, the cost of renovation, or were there any other funds used for renovation?
No, it's funding that is completely raised by the Alliance. So that's the interesting model. The municipality has given the building basically for free, because €1 a year is very symbolic. But the agreement is that the alliance has to be able to raise all the money necessary for the regeneration of the activity. And what is interesting is that already before the pandemic, which obviously allowed for having more, there wasn't social distancing, so it was easier to organize larger events and so on. They actually managed to raise more money. In the first 2 years, they already raised more money than it was necessary, which would have meant that once they will have reached the overall budget that was agreed with the municipality, they will be able to, for example, reinvest the money that is raised. And this is why they're thinking about also expanding outside of the market, because this shows that the management of the activities actually allows potentially to raise enough finances to not only renovate the building per se, but part of the municipality through a social public private partnership that obviously has to be managed for the public interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniela, may I ask, I know it's not so related to the governance, but since the market is cultural heritage, there are some restrictions, how they deal, with those limitations, because also when you're renovating, you need to have this reconstruction documents, etc. Who was this all preparatory work, when before they signed a contract with the potential user, this association. Because sometimes cities has problem with those cultural heritage restrictions, because there are so many conditions.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point, Barbara, as well. So the situation was this: so we have to say the building was needing renovation, but it wasn't falling to pieces. In the sense, for instance, very expensive renovations, for example, are remaking the ceiling. This needed some adjustments, but it had a ceiling, sort of thing. The renovations were, for example, they had to remake the pavement. They made the heating system. They mended the ceiling that had some problems, and so on. In terms of the heritage protection, they before signing the contract, a very detailed plan was made, and the association, together with the municipality, made a plan of what were the renovations that were needed. So it's not only an agreement on the money, but it's also an agreement on how the money will be spent. And this was also what the municipality did, was that they accompanied the NGO in identifying what were the actions to be done, and also what were the elements of attention to be taken care of, also in terms of heritage protection.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Because on one peer-to-peer learning session, Chisinau mentioned that they have a lot of empty buildings with those kind of problems, heritage protection, etc., and they don't know how to deal it. So I'm really sorry that they are. I don't know that they are not with us, because they can be inspired by your presented governance models. I hope that also other cities will be inspired, because it's very, they are interesting solutions, related to the governance. Very, very interesting, So thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. So with Jorge, we were thinking of doing a little Mentimeter to get everybody to share a bit of keywords that are also related, so that we think a little bit about how to connect these stories that we've been telling you today also to your cases, and it can help a little bit of discussion. We can have a few minutes of sharing a little bit. And obviously this is, as we said, this was a condensed session today of 1 hour, just to have a bit of a touch base, so that we can then arrange maybe a longer session also together in with the new year, where we can also maybe work directly on your cases and think about how we can develop the governance models. But this was a starting point to give you a bit of ideas. In a relaxed mode, you can think about it during the holidays, and we can work on it together with the new year. Jorge has shared the Mentimeter link. If you want to log in and just write a few words, and then I think Jorge
I see
can
some
share
are coming. saw one answer. So the link is here, just 2 questions. The first one is with multiple options, and then the other one is more to collect keywords from you regarding your actual needs for your local areas, for your Agora areas. So just according to your experience, what is more relevant in urban governance? I put there some concepts that we agree all of them are important. We just want to know what is more relevant according to your experience now, after what we saw. So institutional capacity, multi-stakeholder approach. Oh, I should share my screen maybe so you see this nice graphic that is coming. Okay. Okay, it's quite balanced. Political negotiation is coming. Okay. Okay, we are 15 participants with 7 answers. Let's say we can wait for a couple more of them. Who said it's political negotiation is very important? I'm curious which experience bring this topic more than others. Okay. We can go to the next maybe. So sorry. Okay, here it's just an open question and also an open answer to all of you. What governance models are needed for Agora areas, for your local Agora areas? What is the kind of governance model you would imagine? It can be also some models that we just saw, like the rent to invest scheme or the foundation, public-private foundation, or
for example, that. Sorry, Jorge. Yeah.
No, I was just making some examples. Please, Daniela.
No, I was just wondering for some of you, like for Jenny or for the others, Kata and so on. Did you think that was any of the things that we spoke about this morning? Did they ring a bell for maybe some of the cases you're developing in your city? Obviously, you don't. It's not that this. And commenting now doesn't mean that you have to commit in developing that governance model. It's just to have an idea if they seemed relevant to some extent. Or maybe not at all. You're also able to share that if it didn't fit at all, maybe.
You would like to have them, but you think it's quite hard for you? Or it's a totally different context? Okay, a lot of P's, PPPs.
Oh, this is interesting. So, management interested instruments, management, multi-stakeholder instruments, PPP meetings, rent to invest model. Would anybody like to comment the keywords you have? We don't hear you if you're speaking. If you would you like to comment the words you've put in to say what did you think maybe for your city made was relevant?
Maybe if I can,
yeah,
if I can take the word, I think that the rent to invest model is the most sustainable one and the most commonly used, and the relationship between the owner and the ones that are renting the building or a certain part of the building is more easy to manage. It's a two-way contracting, and it's more easy to manage as in a management point.
okay. Okay, and interesting. So maybe in the workshop in January, or when we'll organize the next activity, it could be interesting that maybe we could focus a little bit on this one and how it could apply to the case study in Sofia. So thanks to Jenny.
Daniela, based on the partners' comments on peer-to-peer learning session, there were some. They had problems with implementing PPP model because it was challenging because I think that the problem was that the rules weren't set correctly. You know, the model or the contract and the roles of people involved in the PPP model were not clearly defined. I think that this was a problem because we were commenting on the PPP solutions and experiences. They're just for intermezzo.
Okay, this is interesting. So it could be interesting maybe to also share some experiences of PPPs where probably that were to the advantage of the public administration. Because it is true, I don't know if it's your experience, but in many cases of city we've been working with, is that municipalities not always have offices and experience in managing this type of contracts, whilst the private companies that are joining the PPP have very strong legal departments, or they get legal consultants to be handling this. So it ends up that the municipality often is struggling because, you know, the municipality didn't necessarily hire lawyers that are experienced, specialized in PPP when doing the competitions to hire the personnel. And the difference is that they don't have the skills of the people inside to manage this type of contract. So this could be something we can look into. Yeah, absolutely.
At the Institute, we were preparing one study related to PPP, why it's not functioning, because the government wanted to know why it's not working. And we also had experience for one large urban regeneration area, which is functioning now very well, but it didn't work in the PPP based on the PPP model, what was planned. So maybe a simplified version of the PPP would be rent to invest model. I see this as a much easier to use, like Evgeny mentioned, that it is a modern and much easier model which can be controlled.
Okay.
I believe what is good in a rent to invest scheme is that when the user of the space invest, they are motivated also by the benefit they will immediately gain from renovating the space. It's not just because they have to, they also will immediately benefit from it. So I think this is the successful part of the model.
But from the city side, you need to have a strong management expertise from the management. You know, I think that there is a problem of because there's not so much experienced people dealing with the innovative approaches in the management.
Yeah, and I think it also involves a lot of engagement. You need to also build more of a trust between users and administration. That's also, I think, that takes time. I believe this process that we have seen today are also quite a long processes, right, Dani?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nila, so I think that this rent to invest model would be one model which could be interesting for our cities. So I think it would be interesting, especially when we'll be speaking about the pilot actions, you know, and developing the business plan for pilot for regenerating pilot areas.
Okay. So in this line also now we can also for the workshop also look into providing some similar models, so we can also see some differences. Okay.
Do you have, Danilo? Sorry. Do you have in this project also some other similar models which were used for regenerating some areas in your project? do you have some similar one, like these simple models which could be interesting for our cities?
Yeah, we have to discuss then also with Jorge and Bahanor, but I'm thinking that there are some other examples that could be of interest. Probably the rent to invest is one of the most simple, so they would be a little bit more complex. I'm thinking there are mechanisms of ethical foundations. Maybe we would have to think how to adapt the model to the different contexts. So this is something that we have to discuss internally also which things to provide. But I understand the line of thoughts that you're proposing, and I totally agree. So I don't know if there's any questions or comments from anybody else. Okay. Well, this said, I think I would like to thank everybody for this very interesting session. It's the beginning then of work also that we will do together for the new year. And this said, I wish you happy holidays, a very fruitful break. I think we all deserve it. And looking forward to more sessions together with everybody with the new year. And thank you very much, Jorge, for the supports and everything. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a lovely morning.
Thank you very much,
Pleasure to
Daniela.
see
It was
you
a
all.
very interesting session. Thank
Yes,
you.
thanks,
for
Daniela.
Bye.
Yeah. Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
See ya.